Hello everybody, I'm just getting stuff set up here for another live session. As usual, I have to use another window for the chat, so we're getting that set up for whatever reason. Just as I want to show up on screen, we're going to get rid of that item right there. And you can see we've got something very different, pretty much from what you've ever seen me paint, well, ever. I know people have been mentioning things like Gaslands for this. Here, we're just gonna make sure that we can see that chat, and I'm gonna bring out, see that little picture down in the lower left-hand corner? That was a reference for this little guy. Well, maybe not so little guy right here. It was that classic powder blue pickup truck, and we did lots of fun little weathering effects with that. We did some layers of that. We even, hey Gary, how's it going? You are the first one in tonight. I know this is a little bit of an earlier start than normal. Typically, well, geez, it's more like an hour, hour and a half from now. I got a lot of stuff to cover here. This could take a little while. We've got some weathering pigments here from Secret Weapon. That's really more of the grand finale there. We have some other stuff here like the tire black and the orange rust. There's a whole set of these weathering paint. I think it's 36 or 40 some odd. There's just everything you could imagine. We're going to do a couple more of these here, and maybe we'll be able to use even more of those products there. I'm going to have to steal some from Kathy because she has some of them. Out here on the palette, we have some old favorites here like this. Blue and brown liner from Reaper Miniatures. We do have some different things here. These are the transparents from Monument / slow fuse / pro acryl right here. We got some other things, the maggot white, basically the off-white stuff that I typically use. And I'm going to show you a couple of other vehicles. So this one here, a little bit of a different theme. It's more of that racing green type of thing, that little stripe going. But you can see, I don't know, I'm going to do something like this. I don't know if you can see the headlights there with a little bit of the glossy stuff going on. We're using some pearl white there, but also a combination of some glowing or some glossy stuff. Here was actually the first one that I'd done. This one was pretty wild. So you can see how the weathering powders, especially here in the tires, there's just nothing quite like that. You can paint that in, but boy, really nothing like seeing stuff like this. So we're just going to use, this is a straight up water, and we're going to go in, this is blue and brown liner over here. We are just going to get in here, going to thin this stuff down. It's going to be sort of a semi-glazed thing right here. So what we're going to do is start up here, work our way down. This is really, is this all that different from what you've seen me do before? It's pretty much along the same lines. You can see that we're letting some healthy amount of water mix into that glaze right there. That's what I love about the liner paints. In some ways, they are a bit like the Secret Weapon weathering paints. Trying to find myself sort of a natural stopping point here, which is going to be right about there, just so we can avoid as many of those watermark things as possible. Here's a little bit of brown liner. It's actually going to work its way in there. It's going to change that to make a little bit of a different gray. Here's even a little more of the brown liner. Just like so. Now you can see it does like to settle down into the crevices. This is why I say, I know the folks that love their contrast paint and all that. There's other things that can do stuff an awful lot like it. I mean an awful lot like it. So let's take our brush here. You can see we can even do stuff like this. The advantage of the Secret Weapon paints, whatever, even the transparents from from Monument there is I don't need a contrast medium or some other type of color to thin them down. And yeah, cost aside, all that other stuff, it's impossible to find some of these things. I know I keep looking for things like wildwood contrast paint and some of those other ones, and I just can't find them. Heck, even snakebite leather. We're going to be using that. I actually have snakebite leather here and the Fire Slayer flesh in there. We'll be using those at a certain point, but I can't. Maybe they're on the GW site, but on Miniature Market and a lot of other places that I go, I don't see them in stock and haven't seen them in stock for quite a while. You can see, once again, just trying to find these natural stopping points here. But look at the difference this makes. This is not like what contrast paint does. This is the blue liner. It's basically a dark blue, similar to the Leviathan blue. So if I had done this with Leviathan blue, yeah, it would look pretty similar, except I wouldn't have quite as much. See how there's not the pooling here? It's fascinated me why the liner paints and the clear paints, both by Reaper, they don't do that. And of course, the Secret Weapon paints most certainly don't, because they're not. They say weathering paints, obviously, but boy, in some ways you can almost do watercolor type stuff with them. You can actually go wet into wet with them. They have some unique formulations as far as how I think the pigment is suspended. Obviously, Justin of Secret Weapon Miniatures could answer your questions much better. And he does his Wednesday workshop specials, which means, well, today is Thursday already. But you can check out his stuff, Secret Weapon Miniatures. I don't know if he has his own YouTube channel. I forget if he's switched maybe to a different platform of his own. But be sure to check out, yeah, those workshop Wednesdays. It's kind of, well, I certainly got some of my ideas for what I do as far as the weathering stuff goes. Go to the source. Why not? Definitely very useful. All of this is, again, just like the normal sort of pre-painting glazing that I like to do. This was primed with the usual Badger Steino res. I can even put a link in the description of how I prime stuff. In this case, obviously I used an airbrush to do a little bit of, oh gosh, people call it the zenithal lighting, whatever. Where are we at here? I'm just about done with that. Now let's work our way across the front of this here. So we're going to take, again, some of that water, thin that down. You can see this is giving me a nice little set to work from here. I could have made this a little bit more blue. I could have used clear blue, which is really nice, intense, pure blue. This is going to be, I think it's going to be more of a brighter blue vehicle. Part of it is, this is a set of commission things, and I'm trying to get variety in each one. Now, as I let some of that dry here, we'll show you some of the other, what I mean by variety, and I mean stuff like this, where we've done sort of the flames on the vehicle. Got another thing over here, more of a police car type of set right there. Now, let's say I was to go tan or orange or whatever. That's great, but sort of the consequence of that is, how do I get things like rust to really show up? Maybe I just don't do that as much. Chipping will. I mean, I suppose I can still do the streaks and all that kind of stuff on it. I guess darker dust and maybe some mud spatter would show up on that reasonably well. But this really wasn't meant to be a muddy type of thing. It's almost a little more arid. sort of more that blasted landscape type thing. So again, we've worked our way pretty much across the entire surface of the vehicle there. Let's hit the, oh, apparently a massive version of a 50 caliber machine gun on top. This is mostly brown liner, touch of blue liner. And let's go right up here. If this were, say, my own choice on what some of these things would be, maybe this is where we take the metal medium and we do that blackened steel and we make it actually be metallic. I could have mixed metal medium in with, say, a light blue color and given it that really, well, sort of a faux candy coating. I know that's real popular in a lot of the model car realms there. Yeah, let's get a touch more of the blue working in here. Didn't know about their weathering paints. Game Killer Rust Effects paint has fine grit in it. That's got to be the Vallejo Game Color then. That's something I'll have to give a shot. It's interesting, the secret weapon stuff, when you're working with it and when it dries, you could swear that the rust paints had little sandy particles in them, but they don't. It's just the way the paint's formulated. Really, really interesting. Actually, here's a little bit of that tire black. I'm going to link some of my other videos where I really use the secret weapon stuff pretty heavily. Certainly that Charbie. Yeah, I'll link that for you guys, because there's several different of these tire colors here. I know it looks pretty much like another dark blue, but it actually has greenishness to it. It seems crazy, but actually the tires do. Well, he researches things. That's why he knows things. So it ends up just really giving the look of a tire there. I could even go in, and you've seen me use these plenty of times before. Makeup sponges, boom, like that. See how I do this on this one here, boom, like that. So it creates a little different effect where this is light with dark recesses, and now we've got even more light down here. It really shows off the dark recesses there, and it means when we do the dust later on, it's going to show up a little bit more. I think the folks that, well, they watch the Patreon videos and stuff, as that's going to start scrolling across the bottom of the screen. They know that I always say that weathering it's like a chess match. You have to plan out several moves in advance. That's just kind of how it is. If you want to get those best results, you say, well, we'll start out with this in order to set up the chipping better. But to set up the chipping, is that going to be okay for the rust or for the streaks? Where are you going to put these things on the vehicle? If it's only on just kind of the leading edge of surfaces in places that are more likely to be chipped, how does the water affect that once the paint is chipped away? If you want to do must and dud effects, must and dud, oof, it's late, that's for sure. But if you want to do anything with weathering powders that involves spattering, whatever, how your paint is, as far as light or dark, it's going to affect it a lot. So we're going to throw this on here. Actually, we will try to get some different color metals in here instead of just stuff that's gray. We'll try and throw a little bit of, believe it or not, some greens in here, some purples. We haven't done it on other vehicles. And actually, there's one other one that's going to be a purple vehicle. This one, I was thinking more along the lines of blue, although this gray is kind of nifty here. So before I start to fool around with the metal on those panels, let's go down here, actually, real quick. I'm going to take, this is from the Monument game. That's the transparent brown. Mixing it with the brown liner here. And we're just going to give ourselves a little bit of a darker undertones on the undercarriage. That's some of the original primer there. It's a red brown, I think, believe it or not, is the name of the color. And nothing really fancy. It's, again, one of those Stynylrez primers. Let's get the hubcaps in here. They can be, I can let those be dark, because the darker those are, the more dust effect is going to show up. Or let's say I put some rust in there, then that'll show up some more. So again, we got this all looking pretty dark. I'm going to go over to my controls here and get the brightness up here a little bit. Get that chat going again. I'm just also trying to let this dry a little bit here. But as we do that, this is that transparent blue. This is really more of an experiment than anything else, because I want to see what happens when this is against some of the, look at that, that is a really light blue. It does not take much, but this is something I do with the clear blue all the time. I just want to see, is this going to be that same semi-translucent effect that I get, say, if I did use the Reaper clear blue. Let's go in here, and all of a sudden, what looked so dark doesn't look so dark anymore, does it? That is why I like to work on the entire figure at once. Not just part of it, the whole thing. Because look at the difference in context here. This whole thing, it darn near looks black on screen. We're applying what's not even a dark blue right here. And this looks like black. So I guess the moral of the story is don't get fooled by, say, what your primer is, or whatever the color that you're painting around. Now this is, what's nice is I am seeing some translucency to this, even though I added a color to make it not quite as translucent. There's still a little bit left. That's what I was hoping for. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. Again, you never know until you experiment. So this should be very, very interesting to see how this particular color blue is going to go along with some of those rust effects. Now, fortunately, these are also, well, weathered and somewhat beat up vehicles, so you don't have to be super perfect on blends because, well, we're going to do chippings in places, rust, streaks, dust. Kind of the nifty part about doing this as opposed to, say, a showroom floor model car. Whole different story there. Now, I did choose one that I had hoped would be of a more simpler coloration because there's only so many hours that even I can do one of these things. And I did want you to be able to see all these different aspects of it. Here, let's keep working our way down and out. These are some harder to reach areas. I will show you some of the little quick things that I did to make things like the headlights just have a little different texture than everything else. I can also emphasize here that these were not meant to be some kind of painting masterpieces that would cost hundreds of dollars to complete. So that's why I tried to find things that really gave it the appearance of something that was pretty, that had maybe 20 hours of painting in it, but keep it to more like 6 overall. Because even after this is over, I'm still going to go back into this. There's some things I'm going to clean up and rework. Some stuff that just can't even be done on camera. Because either I have to hold it a certain way where you can't see it. Yeah, we're having some... I mean, this part here is not necessarily... It's... I don't want to say tedious or anything like that, but it's not going to be the most fun aspect to this. But when you get to the weathering parts, you'll be amazed at how... I mean, it happens quick. It just goes from, well, yeah, some paint here, some paint there, boom. All of a sudden, all weathered. And see, I'm letting some of those initial washes just mix right in here. I don't care, because guess what? That's providing a little bit of shading. So I see these tail lights have a little bit of a different look to them. So I'm hoping to be able to show you what I was doing with the combination of something called pearl white. Here, I'll show you that real quick. This is something I try to use in everything that is something that's like a headlight. It's different than metallic paints. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's just metallic paint." No, it has more opalescence to it. Metallic medium, I should say. That makes things look like metal. And that's what I would have mixed if I wanted to give this sort of that candy color blue. Could have mixed the Vallejo metal medium in with this. Now, Green Stuff World and the Monument paint lines, they both have their equivalent of a metal medium. And I'm actually going to be giving that a try. Is the Army Painting series that I just finished filming episode 1. That's now rendering. It's all about Necrons. And was it the true metallic metals? So that's where we're taking the metal medium, mixing it with regular paint, and all of a sudden now it's as nifty as it is that the color you mix it in with becomes a metallic color. It makes it possible to shade in metal, something you could never do before. Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're taking something like a null oil, something to wash it over, and it ends up killing most of your metal effect in the darks. The darker the color gets, the less it looks like metal, because you've killed the effect by having to add in all that, those washes and whatever. But when the color is already metal to start with, you'd be amazed the difference that makes. Now you can see here, like in there in that cowling area, the initial glazes still were mixing in with this. That's why I started this when I did. So what it's going to do is provide a little handy bit of extra shading to that. Just a little bit less stuff that I have to deal with now. I'm just going to let that be. But I'm going to go in there later with some brown liner and get some stuff into that cowling. But for now, that will do it. So as that starts to dry out a little bit, let's play with some other stuff here. Now we talked about some greens or whatever. What I am going to do, see if I can find that Achillean green or Archelian green. This is it. So here's the contrast paint right there. And we will, I think that's my purple. These are just little watercolor cups right here. So I'm going to dump some of that Archelian in there. And we're not using this like a typical contrast paint. We're going to use this in a different way. It has a little bit of a greenish look to it there. And we're going to mix that in with some of the tire black. Now let's get ourselves some metals here. We're going to do some up here. In this tone mostly because, well, it is facing the sky. But let's get some variation here. So I just took some of that brown liner. That changes it a little bit. Doesn't make it any lighter or darker, but it makes it a little less of the powder blue. I'll work my way around the mount on the machine gun here. Those I might do those as black maybe. I'll see. So now you can see how that initial glaze, all that did was just set up what I'm doing right now. This, I'm going to take even more of the brown liner. This is why I really enjoy these brushes, because you can really kind of make them into any shape that you need. This is typical of, and I'm pretty sure these are just solid resin casts. The rivets are pretty gigantic. Obviously, model car kits, that's not going to be the case. Well, they probably won't have rivets on them, but let's say it was more of a Mad Max type vehicle, those rivets would be very minuscule. Now here it is, just a brown liner. We're taking that same sort of off-white. Now we have a much different color brown, or different color gray. Now we see we're going even lighter on some of these panels. They're facing towards the ground, so that's why we didn't do as much of the bluishness on this metal surface here. We don't want to be shiny chrome anyways, but you still have to think about the environment around them, and the way I see it, the environment around them is going to have more of a brownishness to it, not blue like up here. See the difference in that? Well, at least hopefully you can. Now, we'll go in here, just get some initial metal on this too. Now, something like this, I could do the hazard stripes on there if I wanted to give it a little more color. Maybe I will do that along here. We got this winch going on here, so that's something I might do later on, especially since this is going to be got this blue stuff going on. That yellow and black would make a nice contrast to it. It's also really cool to have stuff like chipping and rust or whatever on top of something that is basically a freehand. It almost sets it down and makes part of the vehicle, as opposed to, well, a decal that's just been stuck to the vehicle. As we work along each of these little levels right here, things start to stand out a little more. I don't want to get too involved in this aspect of things because, well, we're still going to be working on the blue skin of the vehicle there. Just throwing myself a little bit of lighter blue on the tire hubcaps here. Actually, these seem to be, well, it's kind of hard to say it. Are these hubcaps or are those just supposed to be lug nuts here that we're looking at? I don't know. Not going to fret about it. Not that big a deal. All we're doing here is just throwing out some markers there. Here, let's get some metals in here. And straight away, it just doesn't take that long to start to really give this thing some kind of a little bit of structure. Here, I'm just going to let this work its way into there because that's going to have a whole lot of rust and dust in it. If I get too involved in painting that, a couple things can happen. It's just, well, one thing that it's a waste of time because it's all going to be covered by the weathering effects. Or the other thing is that maybe I'll just be inclined to not do so much in the way of weathering on that. And of all the surfaces that should probably get the most chipping and sort of beat up look to it, well, that really should. So yeah, why spend a whole bunch of time screwing around with that only to weather it away later, which goes back to that whole weathering is like a chess match. That may have to be, that might have to be another sticker-worthy saying right there. Although actually, what was going to be something beyond just stickers? We were going to do something else besides, we were going to do ribbons for ReaperCon next year. That's right, all sayings from the Book of Wappel. Maybe have a different ribbon each day at Fort Wappel. It's hard to believe. For some reason now it seems like forever ago, but it was just 2 weeks ago. We were stepping off the plane and taking a bus to get here from ReaperCon. Yeah, ReaperCon was, we just left that 2 weeks ago. So here's that transparent black. That is from Monument right there. We're going to throw that over the top of this. And there is, believe it or not, a touch of transparentness to this. I threw this over the top on the police car thing, and there was actually a little bit of difference. Here, let's get a bit more of that. And for those of you that just haven't necessarily seen some of the episodes where I made this homemade wet palette right here, it is just a Chinese food container. This is the lid right here. A chamois sponge. The parchment paper. A decent quality parchment paper at that. Some water and boom, you have yourself a wet palette. That's all there is to it. Really doesn't have to be that complicated or, heaven forbid, expensive. Now let's get ourselves a little bit of a lighter metal work in here. Let's go even lighter. Like so. And then we just go back and forth with it. This is almost a little bit of wet blending. The one thing I did find is that when you use the contrast paints, in some ways, now when you're mixing it with regular paints, that is, you actually can do a little more wet into wet. I don't want to say it's a drying retarder, but your paints don't dry quite so rapidly. It's a little bit of a difference in the drying time. See how this brush just spreads itself out like that? That is why I really enjoy these craft brushes. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Just trying to work with things here. Keep the timing going on. I want to be able to get to some of these other things, and if I stop to be showing brushes and other stuff, might not get a chance to do all those nifty rust things. So here we are switching back to this. That's the brown over here. You notice I haven't cleaned the brush, which means, yeah, see how there's a whole different look to it? Now what we're going to do is just take the paint out of that. This is almost like we're oil painting. Thing is, I got seconds to do that. rather than, well, potentially hours if it's oils. And we will be doing some more oil stuff. I'm going to do actually a couple of videos on Necron stuff. I want to try using some oils on that. Just want to see how interesting that could be, to be able to use the oils for doing all the crazy metal effects on the Necrons, and maybe even the, what would you say, the object source lighting. And we're just gonna now shift back to, it's more of that bluish color there. Here, let's just work this right down here. And go back to that lighter, more of a brownish type color. Oops, let's get this further down here. And with all of the different weathering effects that we're going to do here, and we're trying to just keep this at minimal shading. This is a heavy texture. I mean, it is a really heavy texture. Here, let's just go right along the side of this here. That's going to be so rusted and dusted. Really don't have to worry about precision on that. Now this, I want a little less of the blue here. A little more of the brown. Again, this is not a dry brush. Sort of a feathered brush stroke right here. Changing this off of that light blue back to something that's more of a tan. Speaking of tan, if these are going to be some kind of shiny exhaust pipes here, they should reflect maybe some of that ground, which is why we're just doing this little bit of a understroke like that. I just want to get a few indications of lighter colors here on what may or may not be hubcaps. Let's get a little bit of a lighter brown look there. Let's do that here on this winch. Underside of this. Now that, we have to go back to our bluish color there. Most definitely. It's very strange. I'm not quite sure why the spoiler needed these very heavy bolts on it, but they're there. So we'll work with it. Yeah, just keep going. Get the top of this here. You can see some of that. That's interesting too. The transparent paints, sometimes they actually will take a little bit longer to dry. Just something to be aware of. Not anything terrible. So see, we got the brush spread out there. Once again, like a filbert brush, it's going to let me start to seek out a few highlights there. But now we're going to take some of that paint away. We're going to start to buff this into here. Now we're going to take all the paint away. Get a little bit of water into the brush, and we'll push some of this around. So you can do some oil painting type wet into wet things. The thing is, it's just going to have to be in really tight selected areas. And the key is to have a larger brush like this and let it basically be used like a really super soft filbert brush that holds a whole bunch of paint. Now let's go back. Here, let's take this transparent blue. Let's see what happens when we lighten it up just a touch more. That might be a little too light. Here, let's get this ready to go here. It's interesting. That's about what the clear blue would be if I mixed a lighter paint with it. So you see how that's starting to change. It's not, it's a lot less purple than it was. That's the other interesting thing about this. I guess the other reason I'm trying this out is because, well, I love my blue and my that bluish purple because, well, Zinch, and that is another upcoming series here just in a matter of a week or two, the Cipher Lords for Warcry. So that's going to be one of a couple series running at the same time. The Necrons, the Cipher Lords. Now look at the difference of that. Can you see the temperature difference there? It's not just a color difference. It's not just lighter or darker. There is a color difference there. But it is still translucent. I guess the reason you say, what's the big deal? Why this focus on stuff that's translucent? Well, one of the things about the standard Pro Acrylic paints, and I'll hold one up in a second here, doesn't matter what they are, these things, they cover like crazy. And by cover, I mean just beyond a blanket, more like a steel sheet. So that can be tricky sometimes, especially when you're used to using things like the secret weapon paints, the Reaper clears, stuff that has the transparency to it, and now all of a sudden that's sort of taken away from you. Well, the transparent paints bring that option back, and that's why I'm testing this right here. So you can see I can leave, if I do a lighter brush stroke there, not so heavy. I'm going to do that here. Yeah, if this is not quite so heavy, if I do a little lighter application here, it's almost a little bit of, and it's not wet into wet either. Again, that's more of an oil painting thing where you're taking wet oil paint on top of dry oil paint. So this is basically a test of the Pro Acrylic Transparents that I've been itching to do for quite a while. I haven't been able to find the ideal subject for it until now. Yeah, look at, I don't know if you can see how that's lighter there. Now it's still, there we go. Now you can see it. See, it's lighter here, a little darker there. That is not the easiest thing to do. If this was, say, the Pro Acryl blue, the standard acrylic blue, it would just cover that, and it would just cover it. Like, as in, wipe it out, everything underneath. You can add some stuff to it, water, or medium, or something like that to thin it down. It's not the same because it's giving it that more of a liquid type of a feel. This right here, that's where it gives it almost more of an oil painting type of a feel, because it's still, see how it's still thick? It's not running anywhere. It's not running anywhere, but look at this. Watch as each of these brush strokes, see, a couple more, and it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Now we have this really nice transition from light to dark there. That is, it's being made possible, brought to you by Monument Transparents. But anyway, and even here, yeah, I can still see right there, I can still see the paint underneath it. Watch this. Yeah, still see that paint that's underneath there. That's good. I was trying to layer it that way. Now, you're not going to be able to do that with some teeny little brush like this, are you? That's just not going to happen. That is why I use these, because I used to use filberts all the time. I liked them, but they don't hold the paint that this does. You can see how much I've been painting here, haven't needed to go to the palette and grab more paint. Yeah, this is this is really interesting. Now, of course, what's going to happen, the more of this that I add to it, it's going to be a little less transparent each time. So that's another thing to think about. Here, I'm going to go back in. I can see how we got that filbert brush going here. Now this is a little bit darker here. Just trying to work that right in over that wheel well. We're going to do a similar action over here. Yeah. Now we are going to ever so slightly alter that, and just a little bit more of that bright warm gray. And this is an area that we can really see, yeah, really see the difference that's going to make there. So those of you that haven't seen the beginning of this, I eventually, when I find out who makes these, I will put that in the description. Right now, I do not know. And like I said, as I find that out, hopefully tomorrow, I'll be able to put that in the description for you, and then you can seek these out. If they're still being made, who knows? Could have been a Kickstarter campaign and they are not available anymore. That happens. Now let's do just like we were doing before, right along this area here. See now, oh look at what that transparent black did. See how there's a little bit of shading to that? It didn't look like it when we first put it down. And remember, I barely thinned it down. It's the tiniest touch of water to thin it down. That's all I did. So yeah, this really, that's another reason why I wanted to use this particular blue. It was, well, for just the sake of the project, it was to have a vehicle that was a different color. But I really wanted to try this out. And to me, this is what I was hoping I would be able to do with the transparency. It's going to be important for some of these other projects that are coming up. Here, let's see how that gets feathered. We're going to do this again. We're going to go right down here. Right down that the pylon there that holds up your roof. And I'm going to get a little bit of that, the color of the vehicle, spread onto those. Now along the door here, so we got some fresh paint here. What I'm going to do is build this up and then sweep it across here. So sorry if the table kind of shakes here. We are, gosh, it's scary to think that October's, well, what, 10 days away, 11 days away? That's scary. But at some point in early October, there's going to be a bit of a studio redo. I'm going to try and put a different table here so that maybe there's a little less, it looks less earthquake prone. Here, let's get the, right there on the tail, and then sweep this along here. Now here I still have, look at that, some of that initial wash there is still, that's still wet. That's pretty wild. And I'm going to continue to build up the roof color light. So remember, this is where we started over here, and we're already up to this level of light. But you can tell it's not that usual method of layering that just, to me, is very cumbersome. Look at that one brush stroke. I get down in here, and then a brush stroke. A brush stroke. I really loved the old watercolor exercises where we would actually count brush strokes, and you only had so many. You'd have 400 brush strokes to do a painting, and it sounded like a whole lot until I'd be counting for somebody, and sure enough, 15 minutes in, I'd tell them, you've already used like 120 of them. You might want to start conserving some. Let's just keep going here with our lighter blue. Now, this is not going to be powder blue like the pickup truck was. So this will still be a little bit of a challenge. I'm going to grab that pickup truck here real quick. You can see the difference in how light that is. That really makes it easy for you to be able to do all those rust effects in shipping. This is going to be a little bit more difficult right here because it's not as light in its coloration. You can also see, just as I've hopefully been emphasizing in the last few minutes, that I can do some transparent things here. I like to call them, I had to come up with the term dry glaze is the nearest term. Look at this. So again, we want this to be lighter and then get a little bit darker out here, fade out. There's no water there, but what we do have is a nice soft, large brush. We have a feathering type of brush stroke boom like that. Long, sweeping brush stroke. But we also have a paint that it's transparent even when it's not watered down. I know for some folks it might seem difficult to control, but actually it's easier to control. So we're just going to add a little more of that light in there. But every time we do that, we're taking it further away or farther away, however grammar says it should be, from that transparent look. So, but that's okay because you are, well, if the goal was to get things lighter and to cover, well, we need things to not be quite so translucent. See how the brush now is more shaped like a, there. A little bit of a finer shape to it. Again, another thing on this wheel well right here. So this is really good news for some of the, I'll see if I can grab, I got some creature caster figures that we'll be doing those in some YouTube lives. Now, as much as I'm having some fun here with the creature caster paint, I want to paint some of those in oils because I have not painted any of the creature caster stuff in oils yet. And I think that'll be, to me, I think it's really fun. I think they're kind of almost tailor-made for it, because doing things that are chaos in nature, where you have a lot of sort of crazy color combinations and you want to mix things, well, what better way than oils and a little bit of wet into wet. So we're feathering out the brush there, and we're going to run it right along here, and you can, well, at least I can tell just how much of that off-white has worked its way in there, because it's just covering more and more and more. We lose a little bit of that transparent effect each time we go into there, into the tap into that well there of the adding the white. We're going to lose a little bit more of that lucency. Yeah, sorry, the word things pretty much not happening tonight. It's been a very, very strange couple of days. It's hard to believe it's Thursday. It has been a really weird, very strange week. Yeah, so I don't think we have to get too much lighter with this. I'm also looking at my time here, and I want to make sure that there's time enough for some of these other fun things. There, let's get ourselves some lighter blue right along this edge on that housing there. Going to do the same on the other side because yeah, if we want to get the chipping there and some of the rust, if we want to do that, because it makes sense, it's these leading edges, you want to do that. They have to be lighter. It's something that I learned, oh gosh, way back when, that you try and do all that chipping stuff on a darker color. Boy, I mean, it can show up sort of, but nowhere near like chipping on a surface that is light colored. So again, doing not just that, but even using the finger there a little bit to. Now I am going to get some water into this, a little touch of water into that, get that to flow better. And we'll find ourselves a few spots here, maybe some final areas. And yes, this is that same stupid brush we started out with. It's the exact same one that I was really beating up pretty horribly at the start there. That looked like it had no edge on it whatsoever. Turns out it sort of does. Here, let's get a little bit of this blue reflected on there too. I'm just gonna, where I think I need to, I'm just gonna take my finger and just wipe it away. Because remember, where there's a blend that's not just perfect, or just a defect in the cast or whatever, or a place I forgot to file a mold line, well, you can always just have some kind of chipping there or something. Why not? Let's get the other side of this. On the front edge of that cowling there. So let's go to more of let's lighten up some of those metals there. Here, let's hit a couple of these guys. That plate there. Wow, some of the initial washes on that are still actually wet. That's very interesting. Here, let's make sure we get enough of that brown in there. Brown and blue basically make gray. I know that people love using black, or they like using gray paint, like pre-mixed gray paint. That's great, sort of ish, but it's not the same as just making your own. So I wanna make a little bit of a mix of colors here. So we're gonna go primarily more of a bluish gray here, because this is, well, for all intents and purposes, it's facing more towards the sky. We're just gonna hit that real quick. Gonna go back in here again, because I'll show you. Yeah, let's look at some of the plates on this, so you can see what we did there with those rivets, with our rust streaks and everything. Oh, yeah, this is the same kind of thing that happens with the clear blue from Reaper, because it's basically a pure pigment. That's why you've got transparent red, transparent yellow, transparent blue. Now they did mix you a few like obviously the transparent brown and transparent purple. Those are mixes of things, but it saves you the effort of, I guess, of having to mix the purple together, or it can give you a little different personality of purple. Let's see if we can't get some kind of a little more of a shine working on these guys here. It's that same exact off-white that we've been using to mix in with the blues. Look at the difference that makes now. All of a sudden that blue that was so light is not so light anymore. It's all, I use this word all the time, it's all relative. It's relative to what's around it and that context. You've got to have the colors around it in mind. Look at this. It's the same brush here. Let's really give it a boom right there. Take some of this away. We'll just draw that down almost like it is an oil paint. A couple of brush strokes there. If you're laboring away at stuff, that means it's not like Mozart, too many notes. It's too many brush strokes. Hey Bethany, how's it going? Let's see, 1:59. This is a more reasonable time for you, hopefully not too early of a supper tonight. Well, Chicagoland still in mourning the fact that the Bulldogs could not get out of that prelim round in the footy finals there. That was a bummer. Yep, that was another instance of, well, I stay up late anyway, but that was definitely not a performance worthy of a staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning to watch that, or listen to it, as the case was. So we're just gonna lighten that up a touch too, but see, it's got a little more of the brown in it. Gonna do that same thing over here. Right up there too. I guess if we want that to be a little bit more of a shiny type thing. I also have to think of, okay, these are facing up towards the sky. They have to be lighter. Oh, what do we want to do here? What do we want to do here? Let's go lighter on that too. There's part of me that thought, okay, you do it sort of that black vinyl or whatever the heck it is, some kind of plastic, rubber. Alright. Now, this is just to get these things away from, well, that dark primer color. Now, this is that Pro Acryl. This is an off-white. This is not white. Look at how that covers. That's one coat. Now you know just how transparent that transparent blue can be. Look at that. That's pretty wild. Speaking of which, here, we're going to take, where's that Achillean green? There it is. Take some of that with this. And we're going to give that a little bit of a brighter look there. Just a couple more of these, and now we're going to go after some of these massive, gigantic rivets. Oh my goodness, they are just huge. Here, let's do that here, here. Let's get some of that working on this. Now, chrome is one of those things that can be sort of scraped away. Oh, first, last in the house. Yeah, footy is almost yours, or cricket can start. That is something I'm going to have to start to find a way to follow that a little bit more easily. I only got a chance to play it that one time. That was pretty fun. It's in such a, just a way everything is positioned on the field and what you're trying to do. Bowling versus pitching. It's a real interesting contrast. There. Now let's gotta do that same thing here along this. I don't know, maybe it's not as easy to wear away chrome finishes as it used to be. Get a couple of these vertical ones here. We don't want to get too bogged down in that since, as we've said already, there's going to be plenty of other weathering things on top of that. So we're going to spread those out. Now, I'm going to get some of that brown in there. And now we'll push those around. I have no idea. Yeah, it's what's great is that 360-degree field, not having the foul territory. That is just so different. Well, and obviously, the way pitches are delivered. There we go. And the fact that matches, well, I don't know. Major League Baseball games are starting to take almost as long as cricket matches. And they really shouldn't. Too many walks. So many pitches taken. Too many strikeouts. I'm just trying to move my palette camera a bit there. Let's get a little more of this blue over here. Let's get some more of the light here. Now, if we want more of a blackened steel on this, nothing like watching a game the last 5 days. They'll do sometimes. Well, the game is ended very, very late now. Wake up, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and they will be doing cricket highlights there. And they will talk about, day 3, day 4. That is really not the most unusual thing. Heck, from what I can tell, and I'm just going to have to use a baseball colloquialism here, is that an at-bat can last for days. I mean, one person can be at the plate, well, at the wicket, for days on end. I mean, you're most successful batsman there. That's kind of what they're there to do, is basically be up there and drive in pretty much hundreds of runs at a time. So yeah, that's got a little bit more of a black to it now. Yeah, let's try and work in some of, that's the transparent brown there. And I think you'll see that right away on the side of the vehicle here. It's not supposed to be any kind of a mud spat or anything like that. It's really more just to work in some of the ground color. That's all it is. We're going to do that here too. Let's certainly do that here. 5 days, only two innings on each side. Yeah. That's not entirely a surprise to me. Now, I'm not so clear on the notion. I believe overs are what we would call the equivalent of a home run. Because I believe an over is worth 6 runs. I could be wrong on that. I most likely am. I know there's been, I guess, attempts to create a faster version. Not quite like they play rugby sevens, but something where the game is streamlined, where I guess, well, they probably emphasize things like overs much more. Yeah, I definitely have to get more up to speed on my cricket there. As we're just lightening this up here, but you can see it still has a touch of the brown in it. But we're also, here I'm going to wipe some of the paint out of the brush, and this is more of an oil painting type thing. Oh, and over a 6-ball bowl by bowl, and the second one from the other. Oh, okay. All right, that clears that up a little bit more. So we're doing this again. See, we got the brush sort of spread out here. Does a couple of things. It makes that plating look like it maybe has more tint. But see how we're just sort of blending that. It's almost like it's oil paint, but it's not. And we also definitely changed. See how that gun looks different? That is the transparent black. That was just basically, I know it's a weird term to use, but a dry glaze, for lack of a better term. Now, this does need a little, oh my gosh, some touch of light there. So this is again the transparent black. That's the Monument Slow Fuse Creature Caster. I need a little, ever so slightly more here. Hopefully I can do this wet into wet. Yeah. And you can see where I'm focusing on. Just along the center here. Just trying to give it some of that curvature. Here, I need some more of that transparent black there. I was getting a little bit too light too fast. Back again. And that's why the gray that's on the machine gun there is going to be different. Yeah, look at that. So let's go, I'm going to say one more. If you hit the ball over the fence line, it is 6 runs. Okay, I am right. Basically, the equivalent of a home run is 6 runs. All right. See how that just, there. It gives a little bit more of a, almost that vinyl look to it. Now let's give it the final little lights here on this side. We will do that on this side. Okay, let's get, I'm going to get a little bit of the winch here. Like so, I'm focusing on this upper area there. Now, that's got to almost be a little bit more towards the blue side. No, actually, we were thinking of doing that caution striping stuff there, weren't we? Let's see if we can't get a little lighter here on these bolts and then in a few areas in between. Now, an upper surface like this that's also flat, it's going to be one that's going to accumulate some of that water and therefore some of that rust, as we will show you this here. So that's the pickup truck there. There's your cab. So we'll have to do something similar there where obviously you're going to have water collecting into that. Just going to grab me something to drink here real quick. I think I'm going to give that one last That is so hilarious. That tip on that brush. I'm going to water it down a touch to make it flow a little better. Just enough to do that. See it now? It gives it a little bit more of a just a plasticine type of look, I suppose. Yeah, now we're gonna get a little lighter here with some of these rivets. Yeah, hopefully there's not too many rivet counters watching this. They'll go crazy trying to count them all. Yeah, let's get a little bit of an edge light there. Now back into this. Yeah, this also is going to need a similar treatment to what we did on the front there. Yeah, you just don't be shy about just, oh, the heck with it. Take your finger and blend it. It's not going to hurt anything. And we're just doing a little bit more here. Let's lighten this up a bit. And if I feel like I need to lighten some things up along here, I can do that too. Here, let's hit some of these bolts along here. Knowing all along there's going to be some weathering that's going to be passed along those. Now, we also talked about, I've got plenty of the bluish steel and the brown and everything. We're talking about some purple. Let's see if we can't do that now. Do I have some here? Nope, that is the Leviathan blue. I'm looking for the shyish purple here. It's a contrast paint, which is this one right here. I don't need much. I just need a little tiny dot of it. Oh, let's start to mix that into some of this stuff too. Because remember, this is that Achillean green, which we're going to treat as basically a green. Remember that whole notion of purple and green make gray. So now we have a new type of gray. Going to use that here on our machine gun. Because remember, it's not like it's supposed to be a purple machine gun, but it is supposed to have a different color to it than the rest of the vehicle. So that's going to help it a little bit separate itself from the vehicle. You got your sight, your scope on there. Again, none of that is going to register as purple whatsoever. It's just going to be like it's gray. But when people look at it, they're going to just, for whatever reason, it's going to have a little more depth. It's going to appeal to them a little bit more. There's just more to look at. Gosh, we're trying to remember the conversation I had with someone recently who they said, well, yeah, I do my stuff, and the shading looks okay. It's nice shading, but it doesn't have the oomph. When you look at them close up, there's not much to see, and that's the difference. Because here you're giving them some purple to look at, whereas, yeah, see, let's lighten this up though. Let's make this a lighter purple here. Let's see if that's too light. And you can see I'm just gonna let that work in. Like I said, it's purple, especially once the weathering and stuff hits that. You're not gonna see that big difference, but your eye is gonna say, "Oh, there's something going on there." See how that's just a little more interesting now? Just gives it a little bit more differential. Oh, let's just use some of these pieces will just really have that purple tinge to them. We're even doing a little bit of cross hatching right there. That I don't say it's to smooth things out, but I'm looking to get a little bit of a lighter. Yeah, that part of the hubcap there's certainly on that edge, and then on this edge right there. Looking to do that. You can see the difference when you compare it to this one. There we are. Let's do that on top. So it's a little bit like your sunlight coming down and hitting that. Do that on this side too. Again, just a couple of brush strokes. That's all it takes. This is the exact same brush. I believe I have not changed brushes at all the entire time we've been working on this. I'm not even sure if I've actually cleaned out the brush at all the entire time we've been working on this. And I'm not even working with oil paints. And that's always an interesting, fun, crazy thing because, well, geez, there I never wipe out the brush whatsoever. Yeah, let's get a little bit of purple there on that window. Let's do the same thing over here. Oh, let's get a few lighter things going on here with these rivets. Bit of a hinge there. And it is now is the time when I start to consider doing some of the highlight stuff. You saw that we pretty much stayed away from that for the longest time. Well, I don't know how, maybe to you it wasn't that long of a time. We're gonna get a little bit of that purple type color here, get some of that over here too. That's just too much of the original dark wash. Got to change that up a little. Yeah, this needs to be. I'm gonna go back to something that's a little dark. It's almost like a purple black. And here's the other side of that. Maybe it might be interesting here. Yeah, we're gonna take some of that purple there. We'll mix it in with our transparent black. Hit these bits right here. Same thing on this side also. Right along here. And you can see that we're going to do that same thing with the brush strokes. Yeah, it's a long, continuous brush stroke. Maybe we take our finger and blend it a little bit. See what happens. I use a little bit of a lighter purple right there. all the while our mind is, well, hopefully, mind is focused on that final prize of setting up our weathering. And hopefully that's what we end up with. Yeah, so it's interesting as you, the lights catch some of the reddishness in that blue. It's really interesting. So let's see if we can't get a few glinting lighter colors on this here. So let's thin that down a touch. Look for a few edges here. Oh, maybe we do a little bit of cheating on some things, make you more of a glint than it would actually have. Although sometimes when you've got some really worn edges on these things, they can get kind of bright. Sometimes you also have to do, oh, the dreaded artistic license. Don't always like that term because some people's artistic license maybe needs to be revoked. Just looking to get a few, again, some of these edges here. If they get too bright, you take something. I can do the transparent black again and knock down the edge, do a little bit of a glaze or something. It's hilarious. I can still see some of the original, very first glaze that we did, hour and something ago. You can still see that in there. Some of those crevices trying to dry. Yeah, a little more shape now. A little more shape on this side. We did the other side. Gotta get this one up to speed too. It's a little simpler here. Not quite as many mechanisms. Let's just get a little, again, some of that kind of worn finish along the side. And I think we've got this reasonably well set. Wait first. I am going to take just some kind of a yellow here. What do I got here? It's game color yellow. Put some of that out here. Could also use the, oh gosh, the monument yellow, which would really cover like crazy. I'm just looking to get this on the taillights here. And I might add, there's just so much little stuff going on here. Let's just try to, it's almost, well, they're basically just more rivets, even though they're supposed to be taillights. There, just trying to hit those as you do. Trying to get this little, again, circle of these dots going. Just like so. And now, remember that Pro White that I was telling you about? Pro White, Pearl White. Yeah, that's from Reaper. I'll just put a little touch of that over here. What we're going to do is take some of that, mix it with a bit of this yellow here. And then, like so, it just gives it a little bit of a sparkle. Now we're going to be going over the top of this with actually another another contrast paint. You could use the clear red or transparent red from the monument thing too. There's the Pro White again. Pro White. We'll mix it with a little bit of our gray. And let's put some of that here. Now I'm actually going to get something that's a little bit technically on the darker side, and you can see we're building up a texture there. We're going to go even more. See how that's got some body to it? And now look at how it's lighter. But look at what we're doing here. I want to call it a horizon line. But I think, yeah, now you see that? There's these basically almost like little dots right here. That's those, where they're almost like the lighthouse effect, where they're trying to enhance the light that this is emitting. So that's good there. Now I got this on the back here. Let's, I almost used that to lighten up a few of these rivets here. That might have been interesting. Now I also need to get some lighter colors along this. Not as much on the bottom there as on the top. Gonna again not worry about using my finger to smooth things out like that. Let's get this winch. Just a few other lighter areas there. Now, what the heck? Let's give this that little bit of that caution stripe thing we're talking about. So, like that. I'll give that a little chance to dry. In the meantime, I believe we got this Blood Angels red. Yeah, it's another contrast deal here. We're going to deposit that in here. This is, like I said, it's one way to, you don't have to worry about spilling contrast paints. You spill this thing, well, you've lost a tiny little bit of it. Spill the whole jar. That's an 8-hour spill, or however much it is, depending where you live. Now, I'll take this. Got to get this set up well for what. Now you can see how it sort of preserves a little bit of our yellow there. Let's do our next one here. Keeps some of that yellow, but it gets it enough towards the red. And we can do more coats of this too if we want. I may just do that. But now, as that dries, let's get, oh look, we have this transparent black, we have some brown liner. Now I can go into here. And we'll create ourselves the classic caution stripes. I have no idea why there'd have to be caution stripes here, but they seem to be all over the place on vehicles. It's like the thing to do. You can see it's really not the most super complex, hard thing to do. And then we close it out right there. And that's it. Doesn't have to be difficult. Yes, things can, in fact, be easy. So here I'm feeling like I want to tone some things down. Now I might actually grab myself a somewhat of a smaller brush here. And yeah, I'm going to get out some of, that's the maggot white there. Pretty much a similar color to that warm, bright gray. And now, this is where we can maybe start to feel out a few smaller things here. Couple of edges. And now that stuff that we did with the purple that looked so light, well, guess what? That's barely even a mid-tone at this stage. Yeah, let's get some of these leading edges just like we talked about earlier, right along there. So for folks that just have joined in recently, tomorrow, well, or later today, as the case may be, once I find out exactly who makes this vehicle and some of the other ones that you've seen in the earlier portion, once I get the manufacturer, I'll put that in the description for you. There's going to be some other links in there, links to how I like to do the airbrush priming. I've got some other info on using the weathering stuff from Secret Weapon. So take you to some other vehicle projects that I've done. Things that are, well, let's say a little bit more historical in nature, a little more realistic. Yeah, see what this is going to do now. Okay, just really one, again, extra level of something for the eye to look at. But it all is set up by things that we did a long time ago when we first started. Yeah, another little light edge there. So, as you see on the top of the screen and what's scrolling along the bottom, yes, I do the Patreon thing. That's what really helps to fund the videos, because it can take, well, just filming this alone, and there's basically no post-production to this. You're looking at what, 3.5 hours or so. That's just in the filming. Then you've got to do the editing, rendering, and then uploading. So that all takes many hours. And that's sort of what oh, hey, Andy, how's it going? Yeah, we're going to be using that. Well, you're going to be seeing that transparent blue, all the transparents on some more of the creature caster figures. Let me see if I can find one. There's right over. Here we go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to using the transparents on this. So these are going to be some future YouTube live sessions right here. And I'm really looking forward to trying out the transparents on that. Is it just, I don't know, let me do a little something more. It was like working with the Reaper Clears again. Here, let's get some light edges on these. I'm not sure how much I want to lighten that, but we do want to get something here. I'll even take my finger there. Once again, use my finger just to kind of blend that in. Here, let's get the edge of this a little more defined. And then we'll probably chip the heck out of it at some point too, which is hilarious. Here, let's also catch a few little lighter points here. We thought we had the lightest light. Nope. Remember, we always try and conserve that, save it, so it's in our back pocket for later. So it's almost like we're, again, doing a kind of a de facto horizon line here. Let's do, yeah, a couple of, as I said, I don't want these to get too light, but see how that, just a couple of brush strokes there just adds a little bit more, a little more depth to that. And I'm gonna look at my time here. So I think in just a few minutes here, I think we'll get to the weathering phase on this. Because again, we want to make sure that we have enough time. So this is what we're going to embark on, is doing this sort of weathering right here. That is, so that's, you bring up the point there. Andy just says, I don't know if I could weather something that, yeah, especially after you've done all of this to it. I do the same thing with the object source sliding, with the freehand. So many times, well, you spent all this time painting a cloak or something, and you say, well, gee, that could all go horribly sideways with the freehand or with the object source sliding. So that's where I try and do that all as early as I can. Like here, I'm trying to plan out the weathering as early as I can so that I don't spend a whole bunch of time on areas that are just going to be chipped up and beat up anyways. So that line, just all it takes sometimes is just a few little extra brush strokes. Poof, there you go. Now I'm going to say those are actually guns and not whatever. I'm not going to say that those are your headlamps or something. Yeah, I'm going to try and use the transparent black here and see if we can't make a nicer edge on this. So yeah, that's one of the advantages when you're not taking quite so long also on a surface. I didn't spend that long painting that blue, so I don't feel like there's that much to lose, I guess. That's a kind of a weird way maybe of putting it, but it's kind of true. So now that brings out the headlight stuff even more. Let's use this. Here we'll do a bit of a glaze there to bring that down. Again, I'm going to use my hand. Let's get to that transparent black again, and I'm going to reinforce a few edges here too. I'm going to kind of go back the other way. We've gone lighter. Now let's start to go darker. Where else? Oh, probably a whole bunch of places we can do that. I don't want to go too far with the making things darker because we've got so much of that chipping and other stuff to do yet. No sense in getting out ahead of ourselves with that. Yeah, let's take that darker color there and just like we did on the other side, just reinforce a few things. That cowling, I wanted that to be darker. Let's get some that blue on here. And maybe one last round of lightening some of this. What are we at? Okay, good. You can see that. right there. Let's just hit that one edge there. It's a little bit like what we were doing here. And we're just gonna find some areas, like I said, that are maybe appropriate for this type of a highlight here. We got door handle there. Let's go right along this line. I think just one stroke, then leave it. Here we're gonna press harder, harder, harder. Leave it. 2 strokes. Keep it simple. That. I'm gonna just do the same thing we did on the other side. It's the reason why I like the liner brushes versus those spotter brushes. I see people using those spotter brushes. Yeah, well, actually, these will be used in everything I paint actually is used in game, unless it's a 75 millimeter figure, some kind of a larger scale thing. Everything that I paint, well, it's either used by me or somebody else in a game. Yeah, I just say I needed to get this brought up to where the other side is here. So let's go right down that there. So yeah, it won't be me because again, this is a commission thing, but it will be used by somebody. Here, let's get one last bit of light on this. That's good enough. Just use the finger to carry that across. So that's pretty nice. I think let's start to see what we can do here with the, well, no, wait. 1 second here. Want this winch to have a little more shape to it. So I'm going to take this brown here, mix it with that's a transparent brown, transparent black. And I just need to, there we go. Need to get a little more difference in there. This also needs to have a little more difference in it. So that's better. Now put this guy away. Let's get out some of the secret weapon stuff here. Now, this is orange rust. This is actually red rust. This is one of the original prototype containers right here. Here, let's find ourselves a little spot on our palette here. And I'm just gonna take some of this out. Here we go. Let's get a little more out on the palette. So again, orange rust here. I'll just do the same thing. Plop right over there. Now what we've got in here, let's see if I can find them. We got snakebite leather in there. Yeah, these are the 2 contrast paints that we have. This is something I did, and I will be posting a link to that as well. It was a model ship that I did for Cruel Seas, and I actually took some of the contrast paints and basically sort of did almost like an oil paint weathering thing. So here we go. We've got some of the, see, there's your contrast in there. Again, that's the red rust, some of that Fire Slayer flash. See how we're starting to water that down? Now it's time to do a bit of this. See, that has a little bit of wateriness to it. We're going to take advantage of that by using a different brush, a little bit like with oil painting. And then we sort of push that around, take some of it away, do the same thing here. You can even see I can do something like this. I took some of that out of the brush, and then we just sort of do something like this. Look at that, just streaking. The Fire Slayer flesh that's been added in there, it basically it enhances even more the secret weapon, the weathering paint there, which is also designed to do the streaks too. This just gives you one extra little handy avenue to go with that, with the streaking and stuff. Here, see where we start on the edge there. Now we'll focus around the rivets. And then take some of that away. And then we just pull some of it down. Doesn't that look a lot like what people do with the oil painting stuff? Now, I know I've done it with the Big Ammo oil brushers. Yeah, let's do some more streaking there and wipe some of that away. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. There's not just one way of doing things. I'm trying to never try to load you down with rules. I actually try to load you down with options. That's really the better way to go, is to give you options. Let's really work on this here. So this is going to be very watered down. See how that's just mostly water? That is what the secret weapon stuff does so well. It essentially operates almost as a watercolor. So we take some of that away. See how that starts to smooth itself down? Now, let me see. Oh, sorry about that. Got a different brush here. Gonna take some of that brown liner. We'll mix it in with the red rust. Again, we're trying to make something that's a little bit darker here. And now, not each and every one of these bolts, a few. So I've essentially taken the paint out of that brush, and look at how we're going to push this around. See, we move that around. I'm going to do some more of that here. Well, yeah, Andy says, could you load me down with some of that talent? Well, I mean, it's, I don't want to say that practice breeds talent or something like that, but, well, I mean, you think of how many times I've done this. It really, there is no substitute for just practicing that, because I really had to. When I first started doing this, I look at some of the things that I did years ago where I thought, well, that was nifty weathering. And I said, oh my gosh, it just looks like orange paint on it. And it took a while to sort of understand. Like even this, I never did stuff like this in the beginning. So I just threw that stuff down in there. We've got the brush like this. And look at how we're picking that away. Look at what we're doing here. I'm going to do the same thing and take some of that paint away. That's better. And see how we're spreading that around. Yeah, that I just didn't do that. I didn't know how to do that. And then, okay, remember the orange rust that we have? Here, this gets fun because this is the other way it's meant to be used. Here, let me turn on another light there and watch what happens here. See how that just, I plop that right in there? See how that it's mixing itself? This is, now, this is pretty much a unique secret weapon thing right here. It's designed to work kind of like a watercolor paint. See, look at, as I put this here, watch what happens. Now, this is another thing where you got to be willing to let it do that. You cannot force it. It's gonna do it or it's not. See, look at how we're just, it's almost, you could swear that it's oils by the way we're going back in and moving that stuff around, but it's not. It is not oil paints. That's your secret weapon. Red rust and yellow rust. It's pretty darn simple, but the look is definitely not. It looks like so much more. Here, let's go one more layer here. So this is basically pretty much a dot of the orange rust. Bang, right in there. Look at that. That's that much brighter. But I'm not going to do many of those. It's almost like the little rust bloom. Here, let's go on to this portion here because we've got the reason it works because we got all that water in there. If you don't have the water in there, not going to work. Now we can go back over here. Here, let's play with. This is the lighter rust effects there again over the darker stuff. Remember what we talked about early on. Weathering is like chess. You plan moves in advance. Well, we had to plan for this move first by putting all that lighter bluish color down. Then we put the darker rust down, and now look at this. We are putting successively lighter layers of rust down right into some of those crevices there. Now you can go just insane with this and do too much of it because that whole saying, you know, too much is too much and it gets to be too much in a hurry. Or maybe that's just my saying, I don't know. I'm going to tilt this over here and hopefully makes it a little easier to see. This is why I did not spend a whole bunch of time fretting about this because just I knew, you know, you got the tailgate type thing here. That's probably going to end up being a little more rusty and beat up. Anyway, again, we take some of it away. Let's not forget to darken some of this down. So that's some of the transparent black, even a little bit of that Fire Slayer flesh in there. Get that a little darker. Now we can do some streaking on these things here. So this is where we start to make our little caution stripe thing start to blend in more with everything else. This is where all of this stuff starts to be kind of settled back in place. It started to stand out an awful lot, but now with some of the weathering on here, it starts to drop back in place. See how that, as that starts to dry, what that does there? Now over here on this side, once again, the layering of the rust effects here. Now we're starting to add that little bit of lighter touch to it. You can really see it in there. That was the eye opener there when I was watching Justin's stuff, that notion that you have that rust is not just a darker thing. It has its own shading in a way. Just I hadn't thought of it that way. Hadn't thought about it that way, that it could be much darker rust, it could be lighter rust. Now, obviously, some Google search on rust effects or what it looks like. We have obviously taken pictures of lots of construction vehicles to see what do they really look like when they're chipped and rusted and everything else. So, we're starting to get some nifty little rust effects on the winch. Over here on your bumper thing, maybe a few streaks. That's why, again, we did not worry about things being all perfect, because this was in the plan from the get-go here. Let's get a little bit of the transparent black, still using some of that Fire Slayer flesh there. Going to get down into that. Along here. Remember, we haven't done any kind of chipping stuff yet. To me, I want to keep that a little more minimal here. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm not going to do maybe quite as much of that as I've done on some of the other ones. If anything else, just to make a little more distinction between them, I guess. Because there's nothing like you're trying to do a game or whatever, and all of the units or whatever start to blend together, and then you need to put like numbers next to them or something. That's never fun. I don't like doing that. I like to have them be unique enough that they can stand out on their own. Again, taking some of that Fire Slayer Flash Mill, mix it with the secret weapon, red rust there. Now there's also an old rust, a much darker red of the rust type thing, but I just don't have that out. That's all by Kathy's stuff right now. So if you're wondering why I'm not using all that, it's not here. Again, it's been a real crazy day, crazy week, some stuff going on. Now, that is set up so I can do something like this. Remember, we got the wet paint there? And what do we want to do? We want to have this. See how it starts to blend itself in there? Yeah, let's get a nice little poof right there. So we have multiple levels now of that rust color starting to work its way across each of these panels. Let's do some of that here too. And not everything has to be a rust streak. Not everything has to be rusted to death. That's all going to be entirely up to you to determine just what you want to do with that. But I think what you can see now, especially that we're starting to add the lightest of the orange rust, you can see how that's starting to play against the blue here. That really intense blue. That was the hope. I kind of figured that's what was going to happen, but now I get to actually see that happening, that's always fun. So let's just do the thing here along the roof line. Again, getting that up with some water. Most definitely gotta get me some rust right along that edge. So we've done that. Let's push that around like we've done, especially on this back surface over here. Let's push this around some more. And then we're onto that lighter, the orange rust as opposed to the red rust. And then right along that edge there. I'm going to go back to my darker tone here. And I'm going to go along the roof line here. Sometimes it's a little bit, it's going to cover much more like that. Sometimes a lot less. So I'm just going to take this one little section of it here. Do the same thing with the brush. I'm going to push it around. This is how you see we don't end up with a whole bunch of hard edges and watermarks and such. Just going to take the paint away from that. Just like that. And now, while it is still wet, that's kind of an important thing. See, that's where we add in that lighter rust color there. We'll do it here. Yeah, while it's still wet. Over here, let that mix together a bit. So we've got the different lightness levels of rust. And trying to let those little, for lack of a better term, those rust blooms happen. So we've done that spot. Let's do another area of this. We'll take this spot up here. Gonna repeat that same process over again. And there. Now we don't have to do this lighter effect everywhere. You know, sometimes you just give it a rest. Doesn't have to be all over the place. But I like doing that. It's kind of fun. See, now that's really blending together because it's just so wet. And I realized that's going to be scary for some folks. Now here's a different thing. We're taking the lighter, so look at what we just did there. See that nice soft edge on that? Here, look at, we're just going to pull that out and spread that around. Now it's just a hint of that rust color. That is what the Secret Weapon stuff just does so well. Look at that. You have a million different colors here of metals and rust. Do we have to work hard at that? Not really. No, not really at all. Didn't have to be tough. I'm just gonna do both of these right here. Again, take some of that away. We'll get our lighter rust colors in here. We'll let that go down in here too. Why not? Now, on this side, let's get some of the yellow rust in here. Ah, that's a little better. Well, it's weird for me to see it, but I suppose it's easier for you. At least I hope so. Once again, same reason as before why we didn't get too wrapped up in super shading on stuff, because we knew this was one of our final stages. Here, let's get just some of that rust down in there. You can see it's very translucent. Part of that now, it's Secret Weapon stuff, but we've also added almost another layer of the translucency by incorporating the contrast stuff. let's just in some of those crevices. That's where the water's going to accumulate, really, when you think about it. Yeah, you do want to think about, well, okay, where would rust be? Why would it be there and not somewhere else? Here, let's do some more on this bumper. We're going to wipe some of that away. Now remember, we still have that chipping that we want to do, but it's going to be pretty minimal. And then we'll try and do some rust streaks on the actual body of the vehicle itself. Here, we'll just... Now this, I don't want to get too nuts with the lighter rust colors and stuff, because if I want to put, well, things like dust in that area, it's not going to show up. Not really going to show up very well if everything is light. So I have to have some of that darker color left behind. We are going to let some of this orange rust work its way in there. Not as much as we've done in other places. But enough to, I don't know, get the point across. Yeah, like here, there just wasn't a lot of interesting shading at all, so I started to create some with the rust. Here we go. See, same thing. We can just have that, rust streak down there, but now it's a lighter rust color. Let's compare that here, where obviously the rust is going to be a darker effect over light. Now we're doing the opposite here. We are doing the lighter rust over the dark. So here we go. See, we've got that position right there, and now we just pull that down. Let's see if we can't do that. Some more of that on this side. And if it gets to be too light, you can always tone that down. Here, let's pull some of that streak down right there. See what we just did there? And we'll just do minor areas of that along here. It starts to really change how this looks. Not quite so brand new anymore. There. Let's get ourselves a little bit of, because this is attached here, we can't have just a super clean line there. So that is why we're going to go in here like this. Maybe do a little bit of streaks this way. Maybe we won't do too much of the lighter rust there, but we are gonna, see, now it's gonna look more like it's part of the, well, or at least added onto the roof instead of just sort of magically just sitting there. To have an effect on the metal around it. There. Like that. Now I am going to go a little lighter. This is some of that lighter rust here. That work its way in. Do we do some streaks? Maybe not streaks absolutely everywhere. We are going to get some lighter rust effects on this, I believe. Yeah, it provides that extra little bit of layering there. It's the only way I can really describe it. Now at this point, I think I want to do is do a little bit of the chipping stuff. Now there's those makeup sponges that you saw me using early on. Here we're gonna get one that's sort of broken up. This is actually, to me, this is much finer than, oh, you could use, what is that, from blister packs. That stuff, you could use that, but instead we got some brown liner. We got some of the transparent black, maybe even a little bit of that brown. So I got a few different colors working here. And I'm just going to do a few little test applications. Now, let's see what we get. Right there. See that one right there? See, we get the, it's nice and random. But this is the area we're really saving that for, is here. Like so. Now you know why we left some of those light edges behind. See it there? Let's stock this up again on some more. We gotta get rid of the excess though. And sometimes you just have to really shape it. So I'm gonna tear that. Now I've even got a sharper edge, I think. Here, let's get some more on there. And we're looking right at this. I got this in mind right here. Just right along. See how it's a nice fine set of the markings there. Let's do a little more in a few other places here. And like I said, this was not going to be anywhere near as much as what we've done with some of the other ones. And we can also take our brush and can go in and maybe make some larger ones, but you let the sponge kind of figure things out for you. See how I'm doing that? It's like it's going right down the, following the side of that. Also trying to think, well, okay, maybe along door hinges and that sort of thing. That's where we want to maybe emphasize a little bit of that. Certainly along these edges. Oh, actually, here, let's get some of that along here too. Definitely along the edge of this here, kind of tapping away some of the paint. We want to go lighter here. And it's okay if sometimes your pattern is wiped away. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually kind of gives it a little bit of extra realism there. At least to me. Now, where else are we? Yeah, I think we're going to put a little bit of the darker chipping type stuff along here and just a couple of places. You could do the thing where you sort of highlight the underside of that chip. Yeah, I used to do that. I try to not do that quite so much anymore. Not sure why. But I tend not to do that quite so much anymore. Yeah, no particular rhyme or reason to it, just kind of how it is. Yeah, let's get a couple of more of these right along there. See, it just kind of flies right along that surface. And want to do at this point is let's do ourselves some of our weathering powders here. Or we get too far along in this, or it gets too late. So there's your vehicle there. Now we've got a few of these. We've got dark earth, green earth. Not going to use the rust brown, but I will use some of the ancient earth here. And I believe somewhere here are some brushes that are already have some of the powder in them. Yeah, I think this one might be one right here. Yeah. Now, when you do this stuff here, I would strongly suggest that you don't let it get on your carpet or your clothes, because it's going to want to kind of just stay there forever and not come out. That's why I'm just taking a little bit of this, throwing it out on the palette. You can see I've already done this for a few of the other vehicles. I'm not really going to throw a ton of it out here either. So here's my lighter stuff here. Trying to basically throw it where the palette was, so that you can, yeah, okay, it shows up on your palette camera, sorta. Now, I'm gonna take some of the more the reddish stuff here. See how that, again, it's a different type of texture. A little different texture than what the paint gives you. That's why I like to use the weathering powders. Now, to seal these, I either have to spray it with Dull Coat, or I have to use Pigment Fixer, and Secret Weapon sells it, Make Ammo has it. The downside to the Pigment Fixer is that it's really going to alter your finish. It's just not going to have that dusty look anymore, so be aware of that. Speaking of dust, this is more of the dirt color here, which is now destined for things like this, your wheels. And we'll do one here, and you can see the difference between that and that. I mean, look at that, just takes no time at all. Especially a wheel like this that has so much tread. The other thing that I believe I've even tried to do is sometimes take sand and gravel glue, and then kind of use that to almost make this start to pile up like tiny particles of dirt. Suppose there's tile grout or something if it's the right color for that. But yeah, see how that gets stuck in the treads there? There's just nothing quite like that. You could paint that in. I know I've done that in the past, but nothing quite like having the, well, nothing replicates nature quite like nature, and that's what dust can do. Here, let's just make sure we get this into those treads. And then, as I'm mixing that lighter, almost greenish type color in there, let's really get some dusty stuff going on back here. See that? Totally changes that around. Gives it a nice sort of a smooth effect here. Oh, what the heck, we're going to get a little bit of dust up here. We did all of that stuff with the darker tones, so I think we really want to do that. Here, let's get a touch of the dust on this window here. Doesn't take much, but it's a little bit. And in here too. Yeah, let's just get you've got these darker areas here, and look at that. Remember, just like the rust did, where you get that sort of lighter color down in there. Let's do that. Some of these crevices. So now that we haven't lost that nice bright blue, we've kept that. But it's also helped to, I want to say, enhance some of these additional effects that we've thrown on. We got some dust going here along that. So instead of just the rust, now we have some more things happening. Now, as a final little parting call here, what we are going to do, I have to get rid of this glove to do it. Oh, where is my... You could use the secret weapon water effect stuff, but I'm just going to use this art code. It's from GW, obviously. I'll just grab ourselves any old brush here. Here's a cleaner palette thing. Shake this up. Get a little bit out of the palette. Now, I do want to emphasize that this is the truncated version of this. Now, I am going to go back in. There's so much more I'm going to do on this. Probably a couple hours more, at least. But I think this will give you the general gist. There's your art coat here. The reason we're doing this last is we didn't want to get dust all over it just yet. But that's going to give us some nice shininess here. We'll do that here on our taillights, and it's going to really make a nice difference between this and all that dust. So that pretty much, there we go. I'm going to say that's going to be, it's going to get you pretty good here. That's good enough for now. It really gives you some of the general gists of how I did things like your pickup truck right here. You can see we have two very different color schemes. But again, a lot of the principles are the same. So if you can do me a favor and do a like on this video, that's fantastic. If you want to get more alerts on crazy wild things like this, you just hit the subscribe. And if you want to do the Patreon thing, I've already done. This is a Patreon video right here. It's a little bit longer than this one, and it goes into more depth and description than I can do here in a live session. So thanks again for watching, everybody. I'll catch you on the next one.